Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. So good to be with you here on this Thursday morning. We're broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, where we've got not only views of rockets this morning, but also of manatees chilling out in the Turn Basin, as well as dolphins abounding down off of Merritt Island. It's tantamount to a wildlife show here at the Wildlife Refuge, featuring the rocket that you see there in the background. Of course, the rocket is why we're principally here. The wildlife is a fringe benefit, but given the early hour, we will gladly take it. And we are glad that you are with us as we're kicking off our coverage this morning. For those of you who were with us for Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the previous Starlink launch last night from Vandenberg Space Force Base, welcome back. Glad you could either stay up late or get up early. And to those of you who haven't been with us since our double launch coverage of the Ariane 6 and ULA's Vulcan rocket, we're glad to have you with us joining this morning. Appreciate the little more than 500 of you that are watching along with us live as we're getting things going. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage today. Helping to run things in the background of all of our broadcasts is our Spacefly Now editor, Stephen Young, alongside John Pisani. Our Adam Bernstein is also out in the field, making sure all the cameras were set up and in focus, framed up nicely ahead of the launch attempt this morning. If you're not already following the fellas on X, you can find them at their handles on X, formerly known as Twitter. Adam is at ABurnNYC. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. John is at John Pisani Photo. Be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. You can also find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook for those of you that are not on X. We're also joined this morning by our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs, who are bringing us those dolphin views that we will return to throughout the course of the broadcast. Also, taking a look at the live chat, want to thank our moderator of the day, Aussie Space Girl. It's a much more manageable hour down there in Australia. We certainly appreciate Stephanie being with us to help out here in the live chat. The other mods were working hard last night. We certainly appreciate all their help. If you do see any of the other moderators join in with this broadcast, though, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. You can make Stephanie's job that much easier and that of our other mods just by following the rules of the live chat. We ask that you converse in English so that our moderators can respond as appropriate, that you restrain from delving into overt politics or religion here in the chat. Plenty of other YouTube channels for that, but this is not one of those. The use of emojis is perfectly fine in your message. We just ask that you not create multiple lines and big blocks of emojis just because that takes up the chat from other folks wanting to lend their voice to the conversation. Most importantly, though, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. We're also joined this morning by one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, who's able to answer folks' questions in the chat today. Speaking of channel members, our channel member community here on YouTube help make these live launch opportunities possible. So thanks to folks for their ongoing support, like Butterfly, Space Coast Rocket Launches, Angela Cagle, Dagger 41, Sharon Walker, Parker Isaacson, Dan Santarserio, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course, the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Want to welcome in a couple of new channel members here as we're getting things going. Welcome into Rocket Profit and to Anita Brokens, joining us membership at the Pad Leader level. Our moderator, Aussie Space Girl, has been with us now for 29 months and counting, who says, hi, all. And John Coaches, Mr. Coffee, which I know our crew has definitely got going this morning, sent Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, John. Thanks for helping to grow our community here on YouTube. And to our newest gifted member, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank John, Mr. Coffee, in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around for a cup of joe or perhaps a rocket launch, as the case may be. SpaceX counting down towards the launch of its latest Falcon 9 rocket, the 99th of the year so far. Current T0 targeting 8:29 a.m. Eastern, 12:29 UTC for our friends around the world. SpaceX does have more opportunities for this launch to slide to the right, as it already has. We were originally looking at a sunrise launch at about 6:47 a.m. Eastern this morning, and that, of course, delayed by a couple of hours in the pre-dawn hours here. So we'll keep our eyes out for any further adjustments needed by SpaceX before they're ready to launch this Falcon 9 rocket. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings-on in the realm of space or spaceflight, feel free to use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, which will also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. I see Mark Otto has joined the party. Good to see you this morning, Mark. Another one of our moderators. Currently T-minus 51 minutes, 37 seconds, and counting to the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. As we await the start of fueling, let's go ahead and review some of the milestones ahead of the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. Let you know it's on tap as we're awaiting the launch of the 28 Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites that are currently nestled inside those payload fairings. Of course, things will get going when the SpaceX launch director formally makes the call that they are go for the start of prop load. Generally speaking, that happens at T-minus 38 minutes, though SpaceX does an electronic poll. If they're in a good position to do so, they can affirm their readiness ahead of time. Once the go-ahead is given, fueling will start at T-minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP-1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene. That'll flow on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. Meanwhile, liquid oxygen will be loading on board the Falcon's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes is when they start to load a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes afterwards, and the helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP1 loading wraps up. Then at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process will begin. SpaceX will thermally condition the feed lines at the pad ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load. We see this visually manifest as the so-called big vent, which will begin at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at pad 40. T minus 16 minutes is when second stage liquid oxygen loading will begin. Fast forward to the T minus 7 minute mark. That's when SpaceX will start to flow a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. And that helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strong back. It'll start with the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back. That'll recline just a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. Then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of that Falcon 9. 3 minutes before flight, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. At T minus 2 minutes, that's when second stage LOX tank also reaches its flight levels. At that point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Periodically, we may be interrupted by the loudspeaker announcements coming from the vehicle assembly building off camera. That was the announcement that you were just hearing, sort of hearing, depending on the quality of your speakers at home or wherever you are in the world. Coming back to the timeline, T minus 1 minute, that's when the Falcon 9 enters into its automated startup. At this point, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before flight. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting that liftoff at 8:29 a.m. Eastern, 12:29 UTC, or just about 47 minutes from now. Taking a look at our live chat, one of our channel members, Butterfly, notes that Florida looking cloud-free and getting very hot. Yeah, we haven't been issued the daily heat stress warning just yet, but, well, you know, it's coming like a freight train. Meanwhile, as far as the launch weather is concerned, the meteorologist at the 45th Weather Squadron forecast actually a very nice outlook for today's launch opportunities. Looking at a 90% chance for favorable weather during this window, with the only concern being the potential interference. And I love the way they phrase this. They say and I'm quoting here, the main probability of violation concern will be any sneaky cumulus cloud that pushes onshore, end quote. So we will be watching for those sneaky clouds. But so far, SpaceX looks like they've got pretty decently clear skies, a little hazy at this point in the morning. Just a tinge of fog over the course of the last hour, but nothing that is expected to be a showstopper from a weather perspective. If for whatever reason SpaceX is unable to launch today, they do have near identical Launch forecast tomorrow. Also 90% favorable. Good visibility. Liftoff winds trending between 8 and 12 miles per hour. Tomorrow is just a tinge hotter during the launch opportunity, though. Instead of 80 degrees with an 89% humidity like today, tomorrow would be 81 degrees Fahrenheit with 88% humidity forecast. So if you like air you can wear, come on down to Florida, visit our Space Coast. Also, as we're getting going today, let us know where you're joining in from. Know we've got plenty of folks checking in from here in Central Florida. Kyle M is joining us from Southwest Florida today. Obviously, Aussie Space Girl checking in from Australia. We've got Tim Carter down in St. Cloud. Ashley Hayes, Homosassa, Florida. Yes, Bonnie Long Air you can wear is very much a holdover in verbiage from my days in local news. Meteorology was pretty much the only hat I didn't wear in the 10 years I was in local news in various places like Mobile, Alabama, Huntsville, at the other end of the state, and then here in Central Florida. Definitely picked some of the most humid places to work. But hey, you don't need as much moisturizer, right? That counts for something. Speaking of counting, 43 minutes and counting on the clock. SpaceX is just about 5 minutes away from making the call on the start of prop load. Just under 38 minutes to go now ahead of the planned launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. A peaceful morning for fishing and taking to the waters of the Indian River Lagoon today. Certainly helps to beat the heat. This section of the lagoon referred to as the Banana River, which bifurcates from the Indian River. Regarding the rocket in the background of this otherwise lovely fishing shot with birds flying across the screen, SpaceX should have made the call on the start of prop load, assuming that they are ready to move into that part of the process. Once that go-ahead is given, assuming it has been just now, we are roughly 2 minutes away from the start of fueling of that Falcon 9 rocket. It'll begin at the T-minus 35-minute mark. As you mentioned earlier in the broadcast, of course, SpaceX has been quite busy in the past 24 hours. They launched a Falcon 9 rocket from Vandenberg Space Force Base, which was their first launch in about 2 weeks from out west. Gave us some nice views, though, of, well, not the liftoff, but SpaceX got a nice shot of the deployment of these Starlink satellites. Go ahead and throw this into motion here. There we go. There were 24 of the Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites that were set free about an hour and 3 minutes after liftoff. You can see a nice reflection of the second stage. And just before those Starlinks go out of frame, you can see the rods that release the Starlink stack. Right about here, you can see them start to fold back into the body of the Falcon 9 upper stage. Earlier in the Starlink program, there used to be a rod that just released from the Falcon 9's upper stage to set loose the Starlink stack, but they have since made them fold back into the upper stage instead of flying free, and that'll help contain everything. And when the upper stage performs its deorbit burn, it'll keep it as one nice little tucked package designed to burn up all together during atmospheric reentry. 24 Starlink satellites were together in this stack, and there are 28 on board that Falcon 9 on the right-hand side of your screen. Here's a view from the engine nozzle during the release period. As you can see from the countdown clock, we are under 35 minutes and counting. At this point, SpaceX should be now fueling its Falcon 9 rocket. The manatees enjoy a nice morning here on Florida's Space Coast. SpaceX doesn't announce the start of fueling for its Falcon 9 rockets when it comes to its Starlink missions, or at least it hasn't in quite some time. So we're going to be looking for signs of fueling in the next couple of minutes here. What we're watching for is a bit of a frost line to form as the super cold densified liquid oxygen begins flowing up board the Falcon 9's first stage. Given the early morning hour, it's going to be a little bit hard to see the frost line as it begins to form. But if you see that branch that is reaching across the Falcon 9 booster, right about at the tip of that branch is where we should start to see a little bit of vapor in addition to that frost line as the super cold LOX begins to flow on board the Falcon rocket. And you can just start to see a little bit of vapor to the left of the rocket next to the branch that's kind of just crossing over to the side of the rocket. It's very, very light wispy, but we are seeing those signs of fueling, which means SpaceX is locking into its current T0 of 8:29 a.m. Eastern, 12:29 UTC. SpaceX uses a load and go style of fueling, which means that once the tanking process has begun, there's no more latitude for SpaceX to further adjust the T0 liftoff time. Time now, T minus 29 minutes, 34 seconds and counting. If you're just now joining us, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 17, or excuse me, the too many missions this week, the Starlink 10-20 mission. At this point, SpaceX is loading a cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage here in a couple of minutes. T-minus 26 minutes, 30 seconds. Want to thank the little more than 1,000 of you who are watching along with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. I know the question about the boater's proximity to the rocket came up in the chat. If you scroll back up, Chuck is also in the chat and addressed that he's basically out there just about every day, and he's not in an area that would affect the launch opportunity today, so he's not in that keep out zone. Also not in a powered watercraft, which is helpful at that point. Want to thank channel member Chuck Close for a $25 super chat. Really appreciate that, Chuck. Good to see you this morning. And thanks for your support. And Bethany Messina with a $2 super chat, checking in from her front porch in Cape Canaveral. Good to have you with us today. The Falcon 9 first stage booster that is supporting today's mission has the tail number of B1085 in the SpaceX fleet. When it leaves the pad, it will be flying for a 10th time. So before we go ahead and hit that milestone, let's talk about what it has already accomplished in its, compared to some of the other Falcon boosters, fairly young flight history. Its first trip to space was in support of a Starlink mission. It was Starlink 10-5, which launched on August 20th of 2024. Originally, though, this booster was planned to fly for the first time in support of what would be, or what ended up being its second mission, which was the Crew 9 flight on board the Dragon named Freedom. That didn't launch until September 28th. However, the Starlink mission went first because when this booster was being transported to Florida, it was slightly damaged and got a little water intrusion. And so in order to get good assurance that SpaceX had adequately repaired this booster, in addition to the typical static fire test that we see at the pad ahead of a crew launch, SpaceX and NASA opted to have this booster fly a Starlink mission as its first flight, and then proceeded on to Crew 9. That was followed up by another batch of Starlink satellites on November 7th, Starlink 6-77. Next up was the launch of a GPS satellite on a mission that was shrouded in secrecy ahead of time. This was GPS 3-7, known by its codename RRT-1, or Rapid Response Trailblazer. Originally, this was a GPS satellite set to fly on board a Vulcan rocket, but they made the decision to switch to a Falcon 9. In exchange, ULA and its Vulcan rocket will fly a later GPS mission. Next up was a combo headed to the moon, Blue Ghost Mission 1 from the folks at Firefly Aerospace, and Hakuto R Mission 2 from Japan-based company iSpace. Of course, as things ended up, Blue Ghost was a smashing success by all accounts. Hakuto R unfortunately missed the mark, and the company is preparing for Mission 3, which will not be using the same lander that they had for Mission 2 and Mission 1, but actually launching the Apex 1 lander that is coming courtesy of iSpace US, and that is part of the CLPS, or Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program. Goodness, it is early. Fram 2 was up next on April 1st, launching that first crewed mission to a polar orbit on board the Dragon Resilience. You had Starlink 6-93 after that. Just a quick note, the absence of the countdown clock does not mean that the launch has in any way stalled. We're just having a couple of technical gremlins that have crept into our system. We're working to patch that, and we'll have the countdown clock back for you in just a moment here. Rolling on, the Sirius XM SXM-10 satellite launched on June 7th. And most recently was the MTG S1 Sentinel-4A mission for Europe. Launched on July 1st. You see the big vent is now underway there at the pad. "20 minutes and counting now to the planned launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. This venting will last just a little less than 4 minutes in duration. Just under 2 minutes remaining on this vent. This is SpaceX thermally conditioning the feed lines at pad 40 ahead of loading liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9 rocket's second stage. That'll begin at the 16-minute mark. As you can see, the big vent has now wrapped up, and we're less than 10 seconds away from the start of second stage LOX load beginning. Time now T minus 14 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. Want to thank Tim Carter for a pair of $10 super chats. Really appreciate that, Tim. And no, you did not miss the comedy hour here at Spaceflight Now, but appreciate the super chats. This will not be a regular occurrence for comedy here, but since you were so kind to ask and keep up your end, here's your joke of the day. A science teacher tells his class, oxygen is a must for breathing in life. It was discovered in 1773. A student then responds, oh, thank God I was born after 1773. Otherwise, I would have died without it. But didn't promise it'd be a good joke. Dad humor is some of my favorite. 13 minutes and counting until the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Coming up next will be the chill of the 9 Merlin engines, which will use that aforementioned oxygen. Well, I see I at least made a meteorologist laugh, so I will take that. Thank you, Nick Stewart. Time now T minus 11 minutes, 24 seconds and counting as we get ready to see what will be SpaceX's 516th Falcon 9 rocket launch to date and the 99th of the year so far. Let's go ahead and talk about the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX. The Falcon 9 rocket, which stands 70 meters or 229 feet in height, has a diameter of 3.66 meters or roughly 12 feet. Most of that, of course, is made up by the Falcon booster. This one is B1085, looking towards its 10th flight today. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Today, SpaceX is using the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In that image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first, like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach the vehicle's second stage. In that first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the interstage adapter until the point of stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 is powered by a single modified Merlin engine, referred to as a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVac engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites into their intended orbit. Like with the first stage, the upper stage engine also burns liquid oxygen and RP1. Following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, there will be one final burn, a deorbit burn, driving that upper stage back into the atmosphere where it's designed to burn up and eliminate the risk of unnecessary space debris being created by this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, which are currently encapsulating those 28 Starlink satellites. The fairing halves are made up of a carbon composite material and stand at 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height, and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The fairing halves will be recovered a little bit further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Following atmospheric reentry, they will complete their splashdown under the support of steerable parachutes. SpaceX has a recovery vessel out in the area, ready to scoop them up and bring them back into port. They will then be turned over to the Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future flights. As we approach the 7-minute mark and the start of engine chill, want to note that Joni has now been a member with us now for 8 months at the mission specialist level. Appreciate your ongoing support, Joni. Glad to have you as part of our member community. And we certainly appreciate the more than 2,500 of you who are watching along with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button beneath the video and sharing the stream. That'll help allow more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage before things really get cooking. Coming up on 6 minutes before flight, that's when the first stage RP1 tank should be full. just under 5 minutes now. At this point, the tank should be pressurizing for the start of strong back retraction. SpaceX has not yet started its stream, which is why we're not hearing the mission audio that we would typically hear for that call out. We should hopefully be getting pad level views alongside that mission audio here in the next minute or so. Coming up on 3 minutes now ahead of liftoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be topping off in about 10 seconds.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
And you just heard that call out, seeing now pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket. We should hear a similar call in about 30 seconds regarding the second stage liquid oxygen tank. Very pretty view of the Falcon 9 there at Space Launch Complex 40. Fantastic weather as SpaceX is counting down to liftoff of its Falcon 9. Just about 2 minutes remaining on the clock. So far, it's been a very smooth countdown to liftoff. Again, the T0, we'll see the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket at 8:29 a.m. Eastern, 12:29 UTC.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Seeing now the start of the ground gas closeouts as SpaceX releases the liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad.
And ground gas closeouts.
Good call there. In about 20 seconds, the Falcon 9 rocket will enter into its automated startup sequence. Countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. Should hear the call for startup just after the 1 minute mark.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Good call there. We're now just waiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch.
The launch director is go for launch.
And good news there. Less than 40 seconds to go. The rocket will be flying in a northeasterly trajectory once it leaves the pad in about 30 seconds. "15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition And liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-20 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. And we're a little more than a minute into the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. An excellent early morning departure from Florida Space Coast. Falcon passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle, throttling those engines back up. Coming up next will be the chill of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage.
MVAC and flight chill.
Good call on MVAC chill. Next up will be a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage. Payload fairings are said to be jettisoned just before the 3-minute mark. And a good work by our tracking team this morning for an early morning flight. Less than 10 seconds to MECO. MECO.
MECO.
Stage.
Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition.
And good calls. We're seeing some great tracking views from Pete Carson's. Those puffs that you're seeing from the from the first stage, those are the cold gas thrusters. Payload fairings should be separated. There you go. Those fairings will be recovered by a recovery vessel that's a little bit further downrange from the drone ship. Still getting views of the Falcon first stage booster. Pete's still got eyes on that. Hopefully we should be able to see a little bit of the glow from the entry burn, which is coming up in just about 2 minutes. Now we'll use 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines to begin to slow that part of the vehicle down. Booster appears to have reached its apogee today, topping out at about 116 kilometers in altitude. Now starting to make its descent towards the drone ship. Just read the instructions. A good landing today would be the 132nd touchdown on JRTI and the 488th booster landing to date. just about 5.5 minutes into flight so far. We're coming up on the start of that entry burn, which will begin just past the 6 minute mark. That burn lasts less than 30 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn startup. Stage 1 FTS has saved. Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
With the conclusion of that entry burn, we're now looking ahead. Coming up next will be the start of the landing burn. Just hearing a little bit of announcement chatter coming from the vehicle assembly building there. That single engine landing burn set to begin just before the 8 minute mark in flight, with a touchdown on the drone ship planned for just a bit before the 8.5 minute point in this mission.
Stage 1 transonic.
Traveling below the speed of sound now. Landing burn should be starting in just a few seconds.
Stage 1 landing burn. Landing leg deployed. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And it looked like a good touchdown for B-1085, making its 10th trip to space and back.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
We were noticing that there were a number of calls that seemed to be coming late as they got past the entry burn there. The call for the start of landing burn was notably past the published timeline, but it did appear that there was a good touchdown on the drone ship, but we then never saw the second stage after that. We heard neither a call for MVAC engine shutdown or a nominal orbit insertion, which we typically do before SpaceX wraps up its onboard camera views. Not to say that that is 100% indicative of anything going wrong or even strongly leaning that direction, but just want to note for the record that was certainly an atypical end to a SpaceX broadcast. So we'll keep our ears perked and look out for further updates from SpaceX on the deployment of those 28 Starlink satellites. And we'll let you know about any off nominal updates, certainly on our social media as well as on our website, spaceflightnow.com, if there are any to report, that is. Giving SpaceX the benefit of the doubt at this point, which is all we can really do at this juncture. Let's go ahead and take a look at our mission stats as they currently stand, with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, at least. This was the 10th flight of Falcon Booster 1085. Marked the 516th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 99th of the year so far. This was SpaceX's 452nd Falcon booster reflight, the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was the company's 154th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 272nd orbital launch from Pad 40, and the 327th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's where our Falcon bar chart now currently stands. Next launch will be number 100 for SpaceX. Right now, it's looking like that will likely be a Cape-based launch, given the delays to liftoff out at Vandenberg. So all things considered, launch number 100 of the year will probably be Starlink 10-11, launching currently on August 16th. That stays. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 132nd good landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. That marks the 396th drone ship landing for SpaceX and the 488th overall booster landing. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 69th orbital launch from the Sunshine State, the 105th from U.S. soil, the 116th from U.S. Rocket Company, and the 179th orbital launch attempt around the world. There have been 4 launch mishaps so far this year, and here is where our pie chart now currently stands. As we're getting our launch replays fully into work, appreciate all of you who have been joining us for our coverage today. And again, our next flight looks like it's going to be Starlink 10-11, which currently is targeting a liftoff on August 16th. And we use the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas, to catch that first stage booster. Set to be the 20 for the second flight of that Falcon 9 booster 1095 that's going to be launching that next mission coming up. Time now for our replays here. Start with the fixed view from the press site, courtesy of our Adam Bernstein. Moving on to the wide view. Now turning to Pete's south tracker view. Now seeing Chuck and Jen Briggs' video from Merritt Island. And we close things out with Adam's tracker here at the press site. And that will go ahead and wrap things up with our live coverage of the Starlink 10-20 mission. Want to once again thank our photography team of Adam and John who've been hard at work this morning, as well as to Michael. Big thanks to our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images and Pete Carsons with Max Cube Productions. Also, shout out to our moderators in the live chat holding it down today, Mark Otto and Aussie Space Girl this morning. Broad thanks to our channel member community and to Cumulus Granatus for helping to answer folks' questions in the chat. Once again, as things currently stand, we're looking towards SpaceX's 100th launch of the year, which, as things stand now, should be the Starlink 10-11 mission on August 16th. We'll, of course, provide any updates should things shift around. That'll be followed later on by the Starlink 17-5 mission, which, given the late liftoff of that mission from Vandenberg last night, we'll, of course, have the latest on that mission's departure from Vandenberg on our website, spaceflightnow.com. Thank you all for your time and attention today. We look forward to welcoming you back in when next we have an orbital flight to cover. But for now, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.